each of our panelists to answer, and then you'll have a chance to ask questions from the floor. My timekeeper is going to be very strict and let everybody know when your time is up, and I'll try to remind you because we do want to make this quick and easy to get people's questions. So let me begin by introducing State Representative Mark Cohen. Thank you for coming today. Glenn C. Davis, Chair of Philly Green Party and 2015 candidate for City Commission. Go ahead and wave, Glenn. Everybody knows. Most people know Mark Cohen. Sherry Cohen, the 2015 candidate for City Council at Large. Sherry. Alex Shepard from Philly Rootstrikers, who you already know. John Poole, Director of Pennsylvania Wolfpack. Thank you for coming, John. And Boris Sternbach, Progressive Democrats of America, Move On Neighborhood Network. So I will pass the mic, but if you prefer not to use it, just put it down and then hand it to the next person. So why don't we do it this way? So totally arbitrary. We're going to start with you. First question. Oh, actually, you've been working hard. What do you think, Boris? Would you mind starting? The first question, and I'll read it once, and feel free to ask me to repeat it when the mic gets to you. The question is, what are the local problems with money in politics? What are the local problems with money in politics? Does that sound like Carol?
Yeah, I'm an old school teacher, so I do that. So my name is Bo Dernbach. I volunteer with... Really? I volunteer with Progressive Democrats of America, and also locally with Move On. Stan Shapiro co-founded Neighborhood Networks over 10 years ago. And I'll just put a shout out for ptamerica.org. You take a look there at the website. So I think locally we're seeing big money invade our city political system. There are charter school operators that are lining up behind city mayoral candidates. And in the same way that big money, Coke money, can invade congressional and Senate races, they can also invade local races. For example, in North Carolina, the Koch brothers backed reform candidates to resegregate the school system. And they won, I think it was 2009, they backed 4 candidates and resegregated a perfectly fine functioning school district. In 2011, they were defeated after the public outcry, but they did get a foothold in. So that's one example of it. But
thank you. I neglected to say these are 3-minute maxes. Sure.
I mean, we certainly see statewide the power of the Republican Party, and we know that big money is funding them. On our city level, actually, this panel and film today is quite timely. I don't know how many people saw a news article that business interests are forming a pact to weigh in on the at-large race in 2015. So if that's not a more clear indication of the role of money in politics, I don't know what is. So that's why we need progressives to come together and back progressive candidates, because big money is always backing the candidates who are going to push their corporate interests.
I am pleased to be able to announce today that the guy who announced who's heading this committee to increase the role of big business in Philadelphia politics contributed $500 to my primary opponent. He is not starting for the first time, and he has made numerous contributions over the years. Well, I agree with the film's basic conclusion that the only way to fight big money is to get large numbers of people involved. That is not an easy thing to do. Sometimes people say, well, I don't want to get it active too early. I want to see what kind of television commercial my candidate is going to run. And I want to make sure he's got a good volunteer organization. I want to see that he or she has campaign headquarters in every neighborhood. And I want to see that he or she has high-quality literature printed out. And, you know, what they're basically asking for is a multi-million-dollar campaign before they make a decision. And so I think, in addition to being active, I think people have to lower their standards of expectation as to what kind of campaign a candidate has to have before individual people can be active in it.
Okay, how I see to address that question, how it affects us locally let's look at just the general election. The general election for an independent, we have to look at their 66 wards. Our ward leaders get a substantial amount of money to give out to poll watchers. There are approximately 1,500 divisions in Philadelphia. That means if you can pay 2 people to work the polls at $100 each, on election day, that's approximately $600,000. $600,000. That's a lot of money on election day only. So that's how I say it affects us locally, where an independent candidate like myself, Green Party, we don't really have that kind of money available. It's by the power of the people. So the money that I can raise to get out to poll watchers, and it's been proven that poll watchers do get out to vote. They do change people's vote at that time when you give them a piece of paper in their hand and they haven't made a decision yet. It does make a change, and it's hard to get out that many people to come out and vote. That means that I had people that believed in, I ran for state representative in the 198th district, and I had people that believed in what I was talking about and what I was doing, but actually said, you know, I'm working the poll for the Democrat. I'll vote for you, but I can't hand out your literature because I'm getting that $100. So that's how it affects us.
So yeah, I just want to say, I moved to Philadelphia 3 years ago, and I tried to immediately get involved locally on a lot of different issues, and I immediately saw that the local political scene and everything was dictated by national interests and also national corporations. That this controls everything because the current system, the way it works, is money is needed to get elected, and that's not right. There should be a local focus on the problems that we have here, and also there's a system, like a lot of people like to demonize corporations, they like to demonize politicians, which is not fair, because really the problem is the lobbyist institution. They extort favors from politicians and they extort money from corporations, and until we address that, and until the left and the right comes together to address that, this problem is going to continue.
All right, so I guess one of the direct ways that if money in politics or the corrupting influence of money over our politics affects us locally is the fact that a lot of people, they don't realize that you do need money to run a campaign on a local election. There's no public financing for local elections either. So you have small, small budgets, very, very shoestring budgets for people who really just care about changing their neighborhood, creating positive change in their communities. And because they have such small budgets, they're completely drowned out by those that obviously are working a political party or the dominant player or politician selected for those political parties. So you have the inability of certain people, different people, especially those that don't have access to a large amount of wealth, whether it be their own or obviously communities that have that, are kind of hogtied. They're held back from being able to get their voices heard on a local level just as much as a national level or a state level. And it goes up from there. Another effect is that I don't know how many people are starting to really pay attention to what these super PACs and other corporations are doing, but they're starting to get into the local elections as well. Because they know, like I'm sure a lot of you know, is that local elections, that's a good place to start if you've already dominated the sky. You hit the ground, right? They talk about super PACs doing good air campaigns, where they do those materials, they do the commercials, they do the radio ads, whatever it may be. But a ground campaign is locally, where you actually are mobilizing the people. And they're coming into neighborhoods and communities, giving them false information based on what their candidate is. A California city fought Chevron. That's a very good example, where they were dominating the local city council. I can't remember what the actual stat is, but it's like millions of dollars in a local city election. I mean, that's insane. So it's starting to creep into the local level, both at the state as well as the city level, especially these urban areas. And the other thing it creates is that people watch these national elections and they see the money pouring into these elections, and apathy doesn't end with federal elections. It carries through the entire system. People are apathetic about getting involved. They know that it's controlled by a duopoly. They know that money is still affecting the situation, whether you're a big fish in a little pond or a big fish in a big pond. And so it carries across it, and we have a lot of people that not only don't care about what is going on in our national elections, but then that trickles down to them not knowing or caring what's happening in their local areas, and yet they still see the problems, affecting their street and don't know how to do anything about it. So it's a perpetual problem, whether you're talking about from small to very big.
All right, the second question is going to run down from Alex this way. We'll return this way. And this question has a 2-minute limit to your answers. We're getting shorter. The next one's 1. Look out. What is your organization's solution? Rootstrikers.
So our solution is public financing of public elections. Lawrence Lessig, the founder of Rootstrikers, has a plan, actually wrote a book called Republic Lost. How government is corrupted by the influence of money and the plan to stop it. And his plan to stop it, he actually has different national funding platform that that pretty much is constitutional across the board. The Supreme Court could not rule it as unconstitutional like they've had in other public funding legislation. And he tailored it specifically to avoid the Supreme Court from saying it's unconstitutional. This is a man who worked as an aide under Supreme Court. This is a man who works at Harvard Law. He has the resources to be able to figure that out, and it's a very good plan. There's one actually similar in Congress right now called the Grassroots Democracy Act. There's a number of actual public financing legislation in either committee or ready to be on a vote for a vote. Fair Elections Now Act is another one. There's a number of pieces of legislation because the reality is there's not a lack of ideas out there. They're just not increasing someone's bottom line, which is the reason why we passed anything in Congress today. I don't know what my time is, so let me know. But as we go local, our plan is to raise awareness for every person that is either semi-understanding of this issue. 95% of America believes money buys results in Congress. They just don't know what they can do to stop it. And so what we do is we talk to them. But then the funny part is that a lot of people don't know how pervasive this problem is. They know that it exists, but they don't know how it ties to all the pet projects that they're doing and all the problems that they see in America. And so as a result, we try to bring education as much as possible to as many people as possible, whether it be on the local level or national level. We help them understand how the corrupting influence of money over government affects the things that they hold dear, that they are passionate about.
So my organization, which in the state is known as PA United to Amend and nationally as Wolfpack, has a clear solution that they have for this, and it's called an Article 5 Convention of the States. It doesn't just make a resolution that politely asks Congress to fix this problem. It goes around Congress. So 2/3 of the states pass this, we have a convention, and you can suggest amendments, and it doesn't just fix campaign finance reform. That's not going to solve the problem. We need solutions: campaign finance reform, public financing, closing the revolving door where staffers and politicians become lobbyists and are already pre-bought. We need to fix all those problems as a solution to that. We have introduced this resolution in PA as HR 539. It was actually introduced by Representative Cohen. And it will be reintroduced in the Senate next session. It should be reintroduced in the House. And so this is out there, this is happening, it's already passed in 3 states. This resolution, 3 of the 32 that we need, and the movement is growing. The Pennsylvania United Unitarian Church, the statewide group, has endorsed this resolution, and our group, every congregation is going to be putting together a group to help us get this passed in Pennsylvania. So this is not a movement that is small or is growing or doesn't have something going on, and I encourage you to get involved with it.
Okay, as the chair of the Green Party, the first thing that we do is we try to get people aware that there is more to this than a 2-party system. We're trying to make it a tripartisan instead of a bipartisan. Now, my organization personally is Get Up, Gentlemen, Empowering Tomorrow's Youth Programs, because God can't use you sitting down, so let's get up. What we do is we go out there, we focus on the 18 to 35-year-olds that do not vote that hasn't been voting, and try to teach them about running as an independent if you want, learning how to be a committee person or a board leader, even though we don't have that structure in the Green Party. We still want to educate people, a young youth, to say that you can get out there and have your voice heard. We try to get money out of politics as the Green Party, and we also talk about voter access. How it is for an independent to try to get their voice heard and have to get a substantial amount of signatures on just to get onto the ballot. Myself, for state rep, I had to get 300 signatures, but we turned in 800 so they won't challenge us to knock us off. And that's what historically has been done, and that's what we do.
There are endless possible solutions, from having public financing to repealing Citizens United, and I'm sure this may sound cynical and defeatist, but I'm sure whatever grandchildren or great-grandchildren I have will be working hard on that. This is not a short-term project. This is not a project to paint the park. This is a project that will probably outlive by many generations, all of us in this room, even the youngest of us. In terms of what does not require legislative majorities in an area, in an era in which Republicans have a solid legislative majority in Congress and a solid legislative majority in Pennsylvania, I would suggest that the most thing that is at least vaguely in the realm of possibility would be to reestablish the fairness doctrine. That would just require a vote of the federal of the FCC. President Obama appoints the members of the FCC. I would think if there's some pressure directed to the FCC, that might be in the realm of possibility, and that would shut down the 24-hour-a-day political commercial that effectively is Fox News. And I would think that would be a useful goal for people to push for.
As a candidate for city office, again, running for city council at large this May, I'm very supportive of all the work that's been done here in the city to get city council to put a measure on the ballot, which would be a public referendum on the overturning of Citizens United. There has been a resolution that groups pushed and asked City Council to support, and City Council to support that resolution. But getting a measure on the ballot would mean that everyone in the city would have a chance to vote on it. And we need that public awareness, public involvement. I mean, it's all about building people power and building our people's movement so that the power of people can overcome the power of money. And it's a long-term effort, but I really support that on the local level. Plus, there's so many things we need to do to increase access to the ballot. Let's push for, even though our legislature unfortunately just turned more to the right in the last election, let's push for same-day registration. Perhaps in the city, other cities, actually I know of one, has passed the right to vote in municipal elections for 16 and 17-year-olds. You would only vote in the municipal election. But it's a way of expanding access to the polls. And I think we have to be on the offensive. The right wing is on the offensive, trying to disenfranchise us. And we have to be on the offensive, pushing for how we increase access to the ballot.
Progressive Democrats of America, I'm a retired school teacher, I do a good bit of phone banking for them. So if you have an inclination, you could work from your computer at home and push other progressives to get out and get active, and also call Congress. We were strong behind Senate Joint Resolution 19, which is the other way that you can amend the Constitution through a specific law that Congress would have to pass, 2/3 in the House, 2/3 in the Senate, which seems unlikely now. But Tom Udall's Senate Joint Resolution 19 was very simple, and we put some pressure, some local folks, some of us at our Philly Democracy Group, put pressure on Bob Casey, and he was one of the last Democrats to sign on, but he did co-sponsor that. And just about every Democrat co-sponsored it. Some of the independents, like Bernie Sanders, of course, would. And it was a very simple statement. Congress in the states may regulate and set reasonable limits on the raising and spending of money by candidates and others. Congress may distinguish, this section 2, may distinguish between natural persons and corporations or other artificial entities created by law, and possibly prohibit such entities from spending money to influence elections. This wouldn't be everything, but it gets to a long way to shutting out corporations and others, for example, unions, from spending unlimited amount of money. Of course, unions don't have unlimited amounts of money. It's mostly corporations and the super rich that have.
Well, the last question, which is only 1 minute for each answer, even more pressure, but I've got to give these guys credit. They've stayed under. Very impressive. If this is what it means to get money out of politics, you got me. Totally. The last question, and I'm going to mention the name and connection of each person, so as you think about the questions you want to ask, you can either direct them to an individual or the whole group. But I would say again, Boris Sternbach, Progressive Democrats of America, Move On, Neighborhood Networks. The question that's going down the line now is, what do you advise individuals to do to get money out of politics? That's been some of the answers have been offered, but anything else you want to add?
Sure. So I also give a shout out to Neighborhood Networks, and if you Google Neighborhood Networks, it should come up, and join. Right now it's free, and after a point there may be some modest dues so that we can go forward. Neighborhood Networks to me is like Progressive Democrats of America, but on the local scale. Neighborhood Networks pushes progressive legislation like increasing the minimum wage, paid sick leave for workers, fair and full funding for public schools. PBA on the national level does something similar. For example, Humphrey Hawkins Full Employment Act, which was proposed by John Conyers. The Robin Hood tax on Wall Street, which I think came from Keith Ellison in Minnesota. So they're the national equivalent of Neighborhood Networks. You should stay alert with any of these organizations. You don't have to necessarily volunteer to get on their email list. For example, how many folks know that Congressman Hank Johnson, Georgia 4th District, is proposing a bill to demilitarize the police? HR, I think it's 5479, he's looking for co-sponsors. We could call Bob Brady and ask him to sign on as a co-sponsor. If you do that, that has the effect of a lot of money, because people have power to.
Sherry Cohen, 2015 candidate for City Council at large.
So the main thing I think we're all going to be saying is just, urging everyone here to get involved. And, however you would like to. I mean, getting money out of politics is, as the movie said best, it's a baseline issue that if we can succeed in that, we can just change so much in terms of making our government really work for the people. I have to say, everyone's putting in plugs, support progressive candidates like myself who are going to fight to take money out of politics. It's one thing you can do. Another thing is, I was thinking, and I don't know how this became available to be shown for free, this wonderful film, but if people are active in your, religious communities or educational institutions, and this film would be available to host in those environments, or have a house party, invite people over and say, let's sit down and talk about this.
State Representative Mark Cohen. Thank you, Sherry.
Certainly it makes sense to participate in local politics. Sherry Cohen is an outstanding candidate who I've known all my life. And I know all her life, rather. And be active. And don't leave any votes on the table. I mean, if you have a strong, passionate objection to the way the Democratic Party is running things, please register Democrat anyway. You shouldn't be registered, except if you're a Green Party candidate, you want to register the Green Party, that's fine. But you shouldn't be there's no point in being a nonpartisan. There's no point in being a registered independent. All you're doing is you're disenfranchising yourself. There's no point in saying, none of these buys are any good, so I'm not going to register to vote at all. You should, in other words, avoid abstention. Avoid abstention.
Glenn C. Davis, Chair of Philly Green Party and 2015 candidate for City Commission.
Education, education, education. Infecting each other with the truth. We can show and build a movement by the words of our mouth. You know, we don't have to have money. We just sit down, we just heard, have a little house party and start talking about money and politics. Start, like you said, show a movie. One of the main things that I would like to do as city commissioner is do just that. Educate, get into the schooling system. We have right now ROTC, where we can go into the high schools and recruit young men and women to go off into the military, but don't know a political structure at all. So to educate the young voters on that they can be committee persons, board leaders, and so forth, at a year after getting out of high school and having them think that they can do this, instead of just becoming president and thinking it's something so far away. You can be run for city council, run for sheriff. This is education, education, and education.
John Poole, Director, Pennsylvania Wolfpack.
Not affiliated with Tom Wolf. I just want to say get involved. And right now, and you know, if there's something you're upset about, if you're upset about militarization of the police because of what happened in Missouri, or if you're upset about the elections, you know, use that to do something to get involved and do something. And the thing is, my group, I'm again going to pitch it to you that, you know, we have a resolution out there, and it's going to be, I mean, we were talking about, you know, there's Republican majority. We're going to be introduced bipartisanly in the Senate. We just got word that that's going to happen. We have support from both parties, and we have constituents of people who are in both parties, and they just want to get democracy back. They just want to have that opportunity. We're going to have a lobby day in January where you can call in, or you can go in person to help support these resolutions. So anyway, just sign up in the back afterward if you want to know more. You can talk to me, or yeah.
Alex Shepard of Philly Rootstrikers.
All right, first and foremost, the flyers that are out, put on your chair for Philly Rootstrikers indicate that we have a meeting on December 7th. It's at the Friends Center, which is 1501 Cherry Street here in Philadelphia.
What date?
I'm sorry, January 7th. It's a Wednesday. Did I say December? My fault. Yes, it just so happens to be a month from today. We're at the Friends Center, 6 p.m. If you don't know where to start there. Over this next month, look on the internet. Know this project, know this cause inside and out. Because people ask us questions. When we go out to the neighborhood, when we table and talk with people just walking on the street, they don't just, you know, sure, there's people that just blow by you, there's people that say it will never happen, but you would be surprised with how many people ask questions and want to know what you're trying to do and how you're going to try to fix it. So it's always good to educate, you know, check out the websites that obviously the different groups here have provided, and also come on December 7th, because that's really one of the two things that we need, is people to participate. It's easy to write something, it's easy to, you know, learn it, but it's even more important to get involved. There's a small number of us that are really committed to doing almost everything when it comes to this. And the more resources, the more creativity, the more people we have involved, the more we're capable of doing. And that's what's really necessary to be able to finish up, to actually come out and change this, is because so many avenues of creating positive change have been closed to us as everyday Americans. And the only thing that's left to us is amassing enough people that we are too many to be ignored. And that is a movement. And like Mark Cohen said, this is going to be a slow process, but that's what movements are going to become. As Michael White says, they're going to be very fast and they're going to be very slow. And we need every single person to be involved in helping us with that. So by all means, come to the January 7th meeting and spend as much time talking with your friends and family. Like they said, this is going to be a community movement if it's going to succeed. Thank you.
For your questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll come with a mic, or you can yell. I do want to mention that the Ethical Humanist Society does not support political parties or candidates. We cannot do that, but we can support issues. And we support getting money out of politics. If you know of anybody who wants more money in politics, we'll hold another session with a panel supporting more money in politics. So, let me go. Please ask questions and direct them to whoever you like or the whole panel.
To the whole panel. Obviously, the obvious way to deal with this situation is simply no money except public funding. But I'm sure the Koch brothers will find a way to get around that. Now I want to bring up a question that has to do with this. That is, last year, I went to demonstration, anti-fracking demonstration, outside the Mandela Theater with 4 Democratic candidates were debating it. I registered Democrat and I couldn't get into that because I didn't have a ticket. I didn't know you needed to get a ticket or how you got it. They wouldn't let me in. When I was outside, the gentleman who was running on the Green Party for governor came up to me and asked me to sign his petition, which I did, and we got to talking. He told me that in Philadelphia, the Democrats and Republicans who want to run only required 2,000 signatures on the petition. He needed 17,000. I was outraged when he told me that. When I went into the voting booth on November, what did I see? The GOP and the Democrats. I didn't have a choice. Nobody was representing me. I am vehemently opposed to fracking. There was nobody on that ballot that I could vote for. I had to vote for Wolf. Wolf is in favor of taxing the corporations. I'm all for that. But he is in favor of fracking. So I was outraged, and I want to bring one more thing.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Because we have
What
panelists.
are you going to do? What are you going to do about the voting machines? They didn't bring this up. They took about gerrymandering. The voting machines are manufactured by people who are in the Republican Party. What are you going to do? How do I know my vote was counted correctly?
Thank you. Anybody want to take? There are a couple of questions.
Yeah,
I'll start with
sure.
that.
Okay. So you're talking about Paul Glover, and
Yes.
I worked on trying to get him on the ballot also. I was the only person from the Green Party that made it on the ballot in Philadelphia.
Congratulations.
So what we're going around is educating people on how the disparity of the signatures that had to be received. I was lucky this time around. I only had to receive 300 because of the redistricting. So they put us on an equal playing field. But I still had to know that I had to turn in a lot more. So I actually turned in 800. So they didn't give a challenge. We had a young man named Sweeney, who is the chair of the state party. He actually ran also. And they challenged his signatures. He had to turn in 500. He turned in 750. They took off 252. So they kicked him off the ballot by 2. And if he had challenged it, he would have procured a lot of finances to challenge that, approximately $15,000, $30,000. So we educate a lot of people on this fact that it takes so much to get an independent on to ballot. But I'm just saying, that's not going to happen. I'm the chair, and I'm trying my best not to let that happen in Philadelphia. Like, I will be on the ballot. I'm telling you that now.
He was?
He wasn't. That was a state issue. We need to go around. We received approximately 1,400 signatures. 14,000 signatures, and we needed 17,000, so they weren't even turned in. Most of those signatures came from Philadelphia. So once I learned that and did that analysis, next time that comes around, it's not going to happen. He will get on the ballot. The biggest issue is getting him elected. That's the same issue that I run when I did what I had to do. When I ran for state representative, I used approximately $1,400. And I got 730 votes in approximately 2.5 months, 3 months. So that's why I'm starting now and realize that we need to educate people. That's why I'm running for city commissioner. It was the education that was lacking. That a lot of people, one of the major things that I'm going to get rid of also is the one button for all your candidates. One button, you vote all Democrat. My opponent, Vanessa Lowry Brown, in the primary received approximately 8,000 votes. In the general election, she received 16,000. 16,000 people did not vote for Vanessa Loudon Brown. They voted to get Corbett out of office. And they said, I'm a Democrat, I want him out of Corbett out of office, and I pushed that one vote, and that's how she achieved all of those votes. So, as state commissioner, once again, education. I'll be lobbying to get rid of that vote. It's that one button. It's an uneducated vote. You need to start voting the individuals.
Any other panelists want to speak on that?
The voting machines. Okay.
I mean, those are really important issues, but let's not confuse cause and effect here. Those are the effects of money in politics. Those are the effects of the distortion, and we have to get rid of that as the first problem. And one of the things I said recently in the March Against Corruption, if you're out there working on these problems like fracking or all these social justice issues, and you're not spending a little bit of your time somehow in getting money out of politics, you're defeating yourself. Because until we fix that problem, these other problems are not going to address. Gerrymandering is a product of all of the advantages that the major parties have, and that's partially driven by the lobbying institution and all the money they throw into this. It's a system. So just remember that, yes, you're fired up about these problems, but that's what I'm saying. Think about learning more and getting involved. There's all different levels of getting involved, and they take from 15 minutes to way more. But consider, if you care about these issues, consider dedicating some time to this, because otherwise, you're treading some water.
So Lawrence Lessig actually does a full TED Talk that specifically targets the primary process and how money in politics and obviously the campaigning and funds necessary to compete in a primary also weed out a lot of candidates in the primary before you even get a chance to vote for them in a general election on what their platform is. So you end up with two candidates that are for fracking without even getting another choice involved in there. And that's because a lot of the anti-fracking candidates are most likely weeded out of the process in the two-party system. On the voting machine, now this would be an interesting thing to check out if it does really rally up a lot, is the fact that it would be interesting to see the major voting machine manufacturers that we use, how much campaign donations they actually supply, to see if they've influenced their ability to be a contractor for that purpose. Because that's one of the hard parts about money in politics, is that what it does is it makes you doubt that there's legitimacy behind every decision made. You doubt that the government is actually playing fair. And so as a result, your mind can easily, whether you have proof or not, justify some wrongdoing as a result of money being involved somewhere. And by removing that money, you have the ability of trusting, at least an understanding that it might not be selected for this, or it might not be selected for that. It builds a trust with our institutions that are supposed to be protecting people again.
I just want to say,
I'll start at the other end for the next question, but we will be stopping, so you know, at 4:15 with these questions, so please keep your questions brief. There's some food, and some of our panelists can hang out and you can ask them directly, so some of the things. Can we go here and then right over here?
Yeah, President Obama received $1 million from Goldman Sachs. If we think the Democrats are our salvation, I think we're fooling ourselves. And let's stop pretending that the Democrats are going to change everything. They're not, okay? They're just as sold out as the Republicans are, and I can sit here for hours explaining exactly what I'm talking about. You want to change, go independent, please.
should I go to a second? And I'll do two in a row, and then we'll let people jump in.
Yeah, well, so neighborhood networks, which Bo gave a very nice commercial for, which I appreciate. Your check is in the mail. Would be very interested in the campaign to promote public financing locally in Philadelphia. And a bill did come very close to passing about 15 years ago, and it's kind of faded from consciousness, but it's very clear that it would be legal. Wondering if Rootstrikers would be interested in publicizing the need for public financing by starting right here in Philadelphia. I think apart from getting it accomplished in Philadelphia, it would spread the word on how important it is. Okay, and the candidate for office and the elected officials, I'd like to know what your position is on public financing for campaigns.
Why don't we start with that, because that's
On this side, we can hear from.
Okay, well, I support public financing of campaigns. As we've discussed, look at New York City, where at least there's partial public financing. So that enables a lot more people to enter the political process. And you see, at least right now, New York's a whole lot more progressive in Philly with the current people who got in to Blasio, a lot of progressives onto city council. And so he's, seeking to provide, early childhood education for all children of that age. He's fighting the charter schools and supporting public education and just doing, reforming stop and frisk. I mean, so many good things there. So I think we really need to fight for that here, and I definitely support that. I also wanted to address the other question, not a question or comment against the Democratic Party. There are those of us like myself in this party because there's a saying that says, I'm in the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. Yeah, the Elizabeth Warren wing, and I think Paul Wellstone popularized that slogan. I'm in the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. So we need to fight everywhere and fight to regain this party from corporate control. Doesn't mean of course we realize where it is now, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't fight to take it back, because historically it has been the party of the people. And we don't have progressives in the party fighting to take it back. It's certainly never going to happen.
It used to be the party of the people.
I just want to say one thing. I spend more time on Facebook than I should because of politics. But my usual reply, Jerry, is the Koch brothers wouldn't have spent $400 million to defeat Obama if he was just like Mitt Romney, except maybe taller, a better basketball player. Karl Rove wouldn't have spent $400 million to defeat Democrats in the last election. So there is a difference. They may be, as Noam Chomsky says, both parts of the business party, but the Republicans are clearly, for example, Paul Ryan's budget, which would cut corporate taxes, cut investment income taxes, so Mitt Romney wouldn't have to pay any income tax at all, because capital gains and dividends would go to zero. I mean, they're clearly the pro-corporate choice. Democrats at least passed the Affordable Care Act so that millions of people can have health insurance, even in red state Kentucky and in Texas. So there is a difference. It's just that we've got to push, like Elizabeth Warren, Alan Grayson, we have to push on the left to make sure Democrats don't forget their roots and that they don't go totally Wall Street.
I would say that public financing is a very worthwhile idea. It's been around for a long time. I would suggest what hasn't happened is that there hasn't been any major sustained effort to get the Philadelphia City Council to pass public financing. I think the Philadelphia City Council, which was coincidentally is 14-3 Democratic, is an awful lot better chance of passing it in our lifetimes than the state legislature, which is now very heavily Republican in both houses.
I want to make sure I get two more questions. Sorry, I'll get back to you. Up here, there.
Okay, I really just have one question that people just do not make a comment on. I'm a person with a disability, I have epilepsy, and I have a service dog. I'm lucky I can walk, but there are people in wheelchairs, and voting booths still have stairs. So where I had gone to in the beginning when I just moved, I had to go into a regular sized door, go down a few steps that were very narrow, which I thought I was going to fall off, and then go into a booth that was very skinny, and I enjoy the fact that people think I'm thin, but I'm not that thin. So I can't imagine a person in a regular wheelchair going into this home, upstairs and down the stairs, into this booth. And maybe if people in politics or people who are in your situation also encourage and establish, there's a large population of people with disabilities that do not have access to the voting booths. And now all right, I'm really ignorant of politics, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, please. Okay, so the envelopes? People, what? People vote, if they're out of the country, they're able to vote via the paper for
Absentee ballot.
absentee ballot, thank you very much, which is wonderful, but not, I've experienced people to actually do this in wheelchairs. But there are some progressive individuals that want to vote, that want to go and vote. So why not add this population to what you're doing? I mean, that would be, and plus, don't forget, they have organizations that are proactive, they have organizations that are proactive, and you add a whole new population of people who want to vote for pro-action, for what you are doing, period.
So,
Keep that in mind, access to increasing access to democracy. We'll tag anyone on, and then we'll go back to the panel.
Just a quickie on whether or not you think mandatory voting or term limits would help the financial situation at all, or are they hopeless causes?
So access to the ballot box for all people, the idea of mandatory voting, and the third, term limits.
Well, term limits certainly increases the need for money in politics. If there's one reform that would help, that would weaken the left, that's term limits. It's a major priority of ALEC to have term limits everywhere. I'm sure there's some advantages to some new people coming into politics, but essentially this basically just creates makes elections more of an auction. The ideal term limit for the business committee would be just one term. They're willing to settle for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 terms or 6 terms, whatever they can get. That's a business reform. That's not a reform that people here would be interested in particularly. I'm sorry, what was your other question?
Mandatory voting.
Mandatory voting? I don't know. I've never taken it very seriously until I saw this film today. I mean, certainly that would increase the amount of money needed. Also, may have desirable consequences, but certainly if you have a universe of 100% of the electorate, it's a lot more expensive to mail to, for instance, a smaller percentage of the electorate. But there may be positive results, and I think it'll be looked at more.
anyone for access to the voting booth for all people with disabilities, et cetera? Anyone?
Let me just say, my understanding is that that's the law right now. I'd like to have information about any particular polling place where you're not where there's not access. An awful lot of polling places, including my own, have been flattened to the ground so people don't have to go up any steps. My understanding of the law right now is that if there is a voting machine that is inaccessible, then you have automatic absentee ballots.
Right, she wants to vote.
That's not true. I'd like to know that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, well, so just to emphasize what he was saying, that it is the law that they have been implementing the Americans with Disabilities Act in terms of access to the polls. So if you haven't, you didn't experience that where you are, so you can contact, State Representative Cohen's office
Or the election commission.
the city commissioners are the people in the city in charge of voting. And there's 3 city commissioners, and they have offices. And the way to reach any city agency or department is 311. So you can just pick up the phone, especially a landline, but because sometimes it's hard to dial 311 on cell phones, but just dial 311, and an operator from City Hall pick up and just say you're calling for a city commissioner's office. You want to report that your voting division is inaccessible as a person with disabilities, because they have been working to change. They've changed so many voting poll places. They've changed because of this. So they just don't know yet about yours. So please call them about that.
Thank you.
Once again, one of the things I will focus on, and I didn't know about that myself, so I'm glad that you brought that up. That's exactly what City Commissioner will look into and make sure it's corrected by the election. So that is very simple, that I would look and I'd like to work with you to find out the name of the poll where you had this incident. To go to your question about mandatory registration or voting. Registered voting is, you got to get into the schools at least. Like I mentioned just a little bit before, you have ROTC in the school system that teaches young men and women to be soldiers and don't understand how to vote. That's crazy. So you need to get into the high schools and start teaching political science. Actually, I mean, that's political science 101. So instead of forcing somebody to do something they don't know how to do or what to do, let's educate them on that level. I just would like to, this is a little off, but I heard that, you know, we have people that's on the Democratic side of the Democratic wing. You know, a bird can fly with a broken wing, but it can't soar without both wings. And that's what I want the independent voice to start soaring.
I just wanted to address really quickly the mandatory voting and the term limits. With mandatory voting, I think that's that's a separate issue. It's like voter turnout. Until we fix money in politics, we're going to have voter ID. We're going to have like gerrymandering, all those restrictions, and those are effects of money in politics. And the solution is not voter turnout. The solution is not mandatory voting, because that'll just give them another way to get around to it. And with term limits, I mean, that in itself would have a lot of problems, like Representative Cohen said, in limiting people's choice. But if it were implemented without other reforms, that's why the convention is so important. And who knows if term limits would come out of that. But it's really popular with the American people, like in the upper 90s, like more than any other reform. So it has to be discussed as part of the democratic way of discussing money in politics. Maybe it won't end up that it'll be one of those reforms. Some of us aren't in favor of it. You know, like there are disadvantages to it. It does limit people's choice to keep having the same person. But it will be part of that conversation. But it won't be an isolated part of the conversation where the people who want to hijack our democracy will take it and use it to cause us to have less choice rather than more, if we have the Article 5 potential in place.
Last question, and then you can ask questions individually to our panelists.
Sure. My name is Anthony Holiday. I live in Southwest Philadelphia. Hi, move on. I'm always on with you guys. My question is for the person who's running for city council, Ms. Cohen. Are you going to be accessible for everyone? I mean, it says at large, so that means everybody. And also, would you be available to meet with certain people in the community to talk about how they can build their communities up and not let it look like it's doing right now? And also, can we redistrict instead of every 10 years, how about every 8 years? Because people sit in office for so long and they get so used to the positions that they have. People just go out randomly and just vote for them, and they just keep getting in office, and no one gets done. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for delivering the mic.
Where's our issue?
I thought it was just for Sherry. Yeah. Well, we can start with Sherry first, since you asked her right away, and then
Yes.
you can see what else.
Thank you.
That's okay.
But I wanted to bring it in.
Oh, thank you.
All right, well, I love that question, thank you. That's why I'm running for council, because I'm an activist for economic and social justice. And I believe that government should be, the people there should be fighters for our neighborhoods, our community, for working people, poor people, women, LGBT people, and that's who I am, and that's why I'm running. So in terms of being accessible, I mean, I'm out in the streets at protests. I'm going to be at the die-in. Folks know 7 o'clock tonight at Broad and Patterson is a die-in that this coalition of clergy and neighborhoods is sponsoring. So it's going to be a die-in to say that we stand in solidarity with the people of Ferguson, Missouri, and Staten Island, New York, and everyone around the country. So yeah, definitely at large means citywide, and I'm all about how do we build up every neighborhood in our city. And absolutely, that's exactly who I am. So in terms of redistricting, other people can talk about that. But right now, it's in the home rule charter of the city, and it's in the state constitution.
It's every 10 years.
Every 10 years.
We just have time for any other final response. One last time.
All right, well, as City Commissioner, first of all, if people don't know me, I'm very accessible. I'm always out there at the Fight for 15 rallies, the 10-10 rallies, the marijuana reform. I'm out in my community as the chair of the Shepherd Recreation Center. So as City Commissioner, it is my job to definitely get out to everyone and try to get out the person that does not vote, the 18 to 35, the 35 to about 60 that's disenfranchised, and to start really talking to our major voters right now, or our seniors, and tell them to get more involved into their children and their grandchildren's lives, and to teach them why the importance is to vote. So very open to talking with people.
I just want to really quickly, 1 second, to address Jerry's thing earlier. There's a huge difference between DC and national politicians and the state and local politicians. Do not lose faith in your state and local politicians. If there's one thing I learned over the past year, you can still reach out to them, you know, and everything, and they are working for great issues out there. The other thing I want to say is I just want to thank the Ethical Society for having us here and having this whole thing, and this has been great. And Kyla and Bo for organizing this whole thing and inviting me and everyone else out, and it's been a great time, and hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, Sherry. I'll see you at the dining. So, thank you, everybody. Work for change. Thank you, panel.
If anybody wants to stay, we have some snacks back there.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ask, we have another group that's coming in, so we just move the snacks to the lobby table.